Hi everybody, how are you doing today? So today I'll be making a video which will make my mom really happy. And what makes her really happy? The Middle Ages, obviously. So, um, actually, I live with a person who lives in the Middle Ages, guys. That's so crazy. She's talking about the Middle Ages every single day. So, but actually, don't tell her that, but she's kinda right. I mean, the Middle Ages were not as boring or as trivial as some of us think. Even I think that sometimes. I mean, they were pretty exciting at some point. So, let's start. Today we'll talk about the definition of the Middle Ages and whether they were really that dark as people say. Then we'll talk about the church's role in the feudal system, and in the end we'll compare the European and Japanese feudalism. I have some really cool facts for you. So, uh, many people would think that the Middle Ages were a very small historical period. However, as you can see here, they lasted a thousand years compared to the prehistory and the antiquity and the Renaissance too. They were huge. They started off after the fall of the Roman Empire and ended with the discovery of America by Columbus. So, what is the difference between the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages? The Middle Ages were the vast historical period of a thousand years, but the Dark Ages were actually only the first couple of years, which were, let's say, the hardest years because it was right after the fall of the Roman Empire and Europe was very unorganized. Many wars were happening at that time, and it had no leader after many years. So, why do we actually call Dark Ages dark? Were they really that dark? Well, it was a time for great instability. It was a time of great instability for Europe because the Romans were replaced by the barbarian tribes coming from the north, and also um, many vibrant cities disappeared because of that. Latin was replaced by Germanic languages or by regional dialects of Latin, which made communication very hard, and that means that illiteracy increased. And also, Catholic Church constantly tried to wipe out their competitors. So any idea that did not follow what they believed was wiped out and destroyed. No other religions were allowed. It's important to note that uh, the Dark Ages only refer to Europe, and I only refer to Europe because actually uh, in the Islamic Empire, it was their golden age. It was the best period. So be very cautious. Sometimes the entire Middle Ages are referred to as the Dark Ages, but that's actually really wrong. Because, as I told you, the Dark Ages were only the first couple of years. Many universities were established, and actually the Middle Ages were a vigorous and productive time for all Europeans. Also, science and technology advanced a lot, and medieval people are often wrongly stereotyped as backward, but barbaric, and stifled by religion, but that's actually wrong, because many people, and actually the greatest scientists of the period, tended to be monks. Now, um, the so when the Roman Empire collapsed, and therefore Rome collapsed, um, it was a great time of instability for Europe, and that's and that is because uh, they had no central leader after so much time, after a lot of centuries. Therefore, um, maintaining the economy and the military operations was really hard. And actually, military almost did not exist. And that's why Charles Martel had the idea to give out land to the lords in exchange of their loyalty and their will to fight whenever he needed them. Now, the feudal societies were based on four characteristics: decentralized governments, systems of loyalty and protection, and it was a land-based economy, actually. And also it had a hierarchical structure, sorry. So you can see this pyramid over here. Above everybody was the king. And underneath him were the lords, who were his vassals. Underneath the lords were the knights, who were meant to protect everyone. And then, on the base of the pyramid were the peasants, who were producing food for everyone, but had to be protected by everyone because they had no way to protect themselves from any possible invasions. Now, so medieval societies were based on three orders. So those who pray, those who fight, and those who work. Now, the most important concept was the concept of homage. So in French, homage means be loyal to the ones above you. So that meant in feudal societies that everybody was loyal to the ones above them and protected the ones underneath them. Now, so now let me tell you about the bellatores, the orators, and the laboratores, who are actually those who fight, who pray, and who work. It just sounds better, actually. So these three orders were all protecting each other and fighting for each other. Now, let's talk about the poor people, so the peasants, the base of the pyramid. Actually, even between the poor, there were three social orders: the artisans, the freeholders, and the serfs. The artisans were the most privileged among these people. They worked with materials such as wood, iron, copper, and wool, and they were granted a workshop and a house by the lords, and in exchange they had to be loyal and make tools for him, often weapons for war. However, they remained free men. Then we had the freeholders, who were the farmers, and also and cultivated the lord's fields. Also, they had some piece of land and they owned it, so they could do whatever they wanted with it. And then we had the serfs, which were the poorest out of all. They had to cultivate land and had no protections. Some of them were not even free and had to serve without getting any income back. So, if you had to remember three things about feudal societies, were that they had a codependent relationship, they were based on protection and sustainment. So everybody was protecting each other, and so, for example, the knights were fighting for their community, the lords were protecting everybody and giving them land, the king was protecting the whole country, and actually even the peasants were helping and protecting because they were the ones making the weapons, they were the ones cultivating the food and the land. So they basically protected all the other groups, because without them they wouldn't have a single little bit to eat. So that's why these communities were sustainable. So how did they manage to be self-sustained? Well, through the concept of manorialism. Now let's see what manors were. So manors were basically small villages with the lord's castle. Then, of course, we had the church of the village, always located on a small piece of land, normally uphill, so that they could warn all the peasants of any incoming invaders. Then we had the houses of the peasants, and of course their land, the land they cultivated, and their animals. So now let's talk about the importance of castles. First, actually, did you know that the castles were one of the most powerful symbols of feudalism and the Middle Ages later? Do you know why they are that important, however? Well, first of all, they were the house of the lord of the village. Uh, Second of all, if there were intruders coming, all the peasants would be able to protect themselves by going into the manor and staying there until the knights would fight off all of the intruders. Now, let's sum up. So, feudalism uh, is a codependent relationship. Everybody helps everybody. Knights protect and peasants give food. Lords give out land, and uh, kings uh, protect everybody, give them land. Everybody is loyal to the ones above them and tries to help the ones below them. Now let's talk about the power of Catholic Church during the Middle Ages. So it was basically a pyramid too. So the Pope was above everyone and no one could question him. Then we had the cardinals and the archbishops, the priests, and the monks and lay people who were the people who believed in God. Now, just so you know, guys, the church was really was telling people that they were the representatives of God on earth, and that's how they scared them and helped the king uh, have everyone listen to him and obey to him by telling them that. So, however, you should know that during the Dark Ages, the Church brought stability and unity to a continent torn apart by wars and invasions after the fall of Rome, and also provided moral structure and hope, teaching that all people, kings, nobles, and peasants, had a special place in God's plan. This helped maintain social order in a time when chaos was common. So, our church had the power of excommunication, and being excommunicated was worse than whatever else during medieval Europe. People would rather die than be excommunicated from church. So that's how they scared people, and everybody listened to the ones above them. Now we're finally arriving at the fall of feudalism. How did it fall? There were internal and external factors. The internal factors were the complexity of relationships. People started not being very loyal to each other, and the church and the king had a lot of conflicts in between them, and that didn't help at all. Then there were external factors. There were wars that exterminated populations. And then the commerce grew, and peasants didn't need the lords and the king to protect them anymore because they were making their own money by selling products to other cities. Also, there were the plagues, like the Black Death and many other ones that wiped out entire populations. And also urbanization. There were growing cities that attracted mainly laborers, the laboratories, and they offered them new jobs. So obviously they would rather go somewhere where they could find a better job. Just like today, guys. Now, let's go compare the European and Japanese feudalism. So, just so you know, in both systems, the roles were hereditary. That means that if you were born Lord, you would remain Lord. You could not fall or upgrade. And if you were born a peasant, you would remain a peasant. And in very, very extremely few occasions, you would go up one class. But these occasions were extremely little. Now, Let me tell you about the pyramid. Basically, Japanese feudalism was also a pyramid. The emperor, well, he was at the top of the Japanese society, but actually had a very little power. The actual ruler of Japan at the medieval times was the shogun, because he was the one that had military power. So people were obeying to him because he was the one telling the army what to do and helping the country and protecting it. Then we have the daimyo, which were actually the nobles, like the nobles compared to the Europeans. Then we had the samurais, which were Japan's warriors, therefore the knights. And then we have the peasants and artisans, which were the largest class. And then the lowest class, the merchants. They were the lowest class because they actually didn't produce anything of their own. They only sold products produced by others. Now here are two major differences between European and Japanese feudalism. So, the role of gender. Basically, women in Europe were treated like flowers and were considered very fragile and had to be protected by chivalrous knights. But in Japan, women were samurais. They were fighting and were expected to be strong like men and face death without even flinching. And then also they had a very different philosophy on death. That meant that, okay, so knights in Europe were loyal to church and they followed the laws, and one law said that they could not commit suicide. However, the samurais did not have a reason. They did not care. They actually preferred to commit suicide than lose their honor. It was considered heroic to commit suicide than losing your honor. The Japanese feudal system fell very similarly to the European system. So it was basically because people started having trade, and Japan had many civil wars. Thank you very much, guys, and don't tell my mom, but you see, she was basically right. Just remember that if you know a child that needs help with their homework, I'm always here. You can send me an email, and I'll prepare a 5 to 10 minute video to help you as much as I can. I mean, I can only help with lessons up to 7th grade, but you can always challenge me with a question, and I'll dig very deep to try and find an answer for you. No charges. Thank you very much. See you soon, guys. Love you. Bye-bye.